Barnhouse production.
The etymology of landfill, noun. 1916 from land and fill, a euphemism for dump, an abstract for dusk trickling into dirty soil, colony of Coke bottles wrapped in duct tape, brimming with used syringes, taxonomy of an entire island of waste, love song of 1,000 crows, graves of refuse buried in the arms of burning earth, catacombs I sculpted out of pictures of me and old friends before I started hormone therapy, wound of garbage singing like swallowed light, motherland of urges to want what's inside of me so dead my feathers become the weight of bricks. The Ides of March. I have never written about shooting a gun before, because the closest I have been to an exploding barrel was when my father taught my mother how to shoot in our backyard a decade ago. My uncle drank a fifth of angel dust on his parents' patio in 1985 and shot himself in the head with a 12-gauge rifle. My father still hears gunshots at night when he is asleep. He has never read any of my poems. My other uncle goes to West Virginia every November to hunt and bring back dead things for his wall. Every March 15th, my father takes his brother's portrait off the mantle and stands in the same spot where he died. He slides his feet over the recarpeted floor, says this could be a poem, and knows he would never read it. When Warren Zevon appeared on the Letterman show in 2002, he knew he was going to die soon. Babe, protect me while I press my lips against the handle of an unlocked door, afraid of what dust cradling my expired electricity lies on the other side. As Warren walked into the belly of shrapnel the autumn equinox left him, he knew even the darkness could yank the last breath from his lungs. I have taken every moment I let you breathe into my open mouth for granted. There are so many ways to repair the ribcage of our home all the love spilled out from. Warren painted his whole body into a suit the color of soon, stretching itself around the teeth of an entire year, and imagined his God as a sandwich he never learned to savor. No one wants to pray to a slice of air crammed in between two bruised walls. I feel heaven's weight in the touch of every postal worker's hand that delivers one of your postcards to my mailbox in the vanishing morning of summers. In a few months, I will have lived in 3 different decades, and too frequently I've awoken to the knuckles of my back burning and breaking against a grave of a mattress and feared my 4th decade would crawl into a dead body's mouth. I have lived in between the teeth of a year and imagined soon as God, soon as the drive along the Ohio Turnpike I make just to fall asleep in your arms. Streak of bread. Under the belly of a night tinted with a hue of February cold, Vince Carter, blanketed by an Atlanta Hawks jersey, flew in on a Canadian swarm of wind and dunked so death-defyingly over Kevin Love that my grandmother mistook Vince's red streak of a body for that of a cardinal and asked me why her dead husband was in her living room. On the desk next to her hospice bed, a cracked frame held her wedding picture, a young man in a brown suit, sunken cheeks and a smile my mother passed down to me. My grandmother could see him now, in my emaciated body next to the basketball game projecting into her living room, the cataracts in her eyes shimmering this thin skeleton of mine into a familiar heaven. My grandmother once cataloged the same Cardinals' every move for an entire summer. It crashed into my windshield while I was driving down the road her house was crumbling on. His feathers left lakes of red in the cracks of the wipers. I shoveled all of its broken bones off the frozen tar and into my mouth, swished them in between my teeth, and made a skeleton out of bad timing. It looked the way I've always thought losing a loved one should look. Before I was born, a cardinal was just a songbird, until my ancestors discovered the way morning broke against its feathers. Now I can't tell the difference between the songs of scarlet tanagers and cardinals, dead grandparents, and my own reflection. Ow! This crowd is back there, dude. An ocean of shaking hands. Each time I bayonet a needle into my gut, I am digging up another dead boy buried in the dark corners of whatever apocalypse hides there. I carry the burden of every body unfurled by a needle in the scabbed-over pockets of wound on my stomach. Sometimes a boy is born from the ache in my shoulders if I'm overdue for an injection. Sometimes it's from the songbird of tearing skin, kissing every sliver of open air. Some boys use testosterone to grow a thick field of hair on their cheeks, others to build mountains out of their biceps. I use it to make the geography of my DNA habitable. I think of Neil Young's Crazy Horse guitarist, Danny Whitten, and how his arms drank dust under the tourniquet of 1,000 leather belts to treat the rheumatoid arthritis settled in the thickest marrow of his bones. How Neil wrote his life was in his hands after he kicked Danny out of the band for being so high he couldn't keep up with the group's rhythm. How he gave Danny $50 and a bus ticket from San Francisco to Los Angeles and let him die by the fist of a needle that once kept him alive. Tonight's the night, a vehicle of grief, museum of Danny scattered over a song. I am made of 1,000 things, all inherited from a horizon of sharp touch.
That was poetry, yeah. We should clean up probably, yeah.
I think he's doing something else.
From Barnhouse issue 2, a portrait of the day Fife Dog
Holy
died.
shit, I told you.
Oh, we accepted this poem!
Here I am, huddled under the north hoop at the court I used to play pickup ball on.
Go off, alright.
And I am telling Joey about how A Tribe Called Quest rapped to a painting of Fife on Saturday Night Live the winter after he passed. I tell him this because we have all earned this performance in the same way we've earned this spring snowfall, resting on our goosebumps like attic dust. I tell Joey about how the name Fife sounds like the kind of name a person born into royalty, and the crown painted onto him, a royal death mask for a royal burial, glistened in the final minutes of a freezing Saturday. I recall how Q-Tip and Jedi kept going without their best friend, dancing on a stage while a recording of Fife played from a speaker, and there's a tiny rattle at the beginning of it, and I've convinced myself that it was just laughter. And sometimes a voice runs into the cell phone in my pocket, and the glowing words on the other side of the line tell me that Ruth is in the hospital, and I picture smell of chicken farm down the road as the birthday meal she made me the day before. I think about how Fife used to rap with high blood pressure, and I consider Ruth's shell slaving over the stove before dancing, while the seams that keeping the hole in her stomach closed, ripped open with every syllable, and in that moment, God called Ruth's cornbread bacterial pneumonia. Lungs separated from the brain will try breathing on their own, but a brain separated from a pair of lungs melts like the skin of an overworked body. Egyptians would place the bodies of dead pharaohs in terracotta coffins, deep in shallow oval pits, cover them head to toe in gemstones, food, and ancient games, and there'd be human sacrifices mummified, turned into marmalade-colored flesh figurines, and chosen to stand guard for their beloved prince. Every fallen god would be dressed in golden death masks coated in sapphires and rubies, glittering glass-winged butterflies made of glass, pink atlas moths adorning blooming jasmines, and their souls would live in the tombs, can't even pronounce that word, clanging off the mud walls, humming melodies and beats deep behind stone entryways. That and so many other stories are what I tell my friends when I'm in search for paint blended in the clouds, for thrones crumbling, for making the broken things in my life whole again. Later I pressed my back against the wall of Ruth's hospital room, and the bed before me carried the bones of a queen, and the tube down her throat began pulsating on its way up out of her throat, and the cords plugging her existence into a monitor contorted and coiled into a crown of thorns, a glowing death mask of spare oxygen, and she looked at me, and I told her a story about how the name Ruth sort of sounds like the name of a person all of the royalty might have come from, as the glowing switches and levers of life dimmed and burned out above her unwashed hair. I talked at her body as she mouthed words at me I couldn't understand, and I looked up at the machine keeping her going, listening to the hums it let out, and I convinced myself it was just laughter.